want to talk today about how I use Photo Mechanic. It's a really interesting program because it does a very limited number of things, but the things that the program Photo Mechanic does, it does them so well that it becomes a fantastic program and a mandatory part of my workflow. Now, basically everything you can do in Photo Mechanic, you could do in Lightroom, but Photo Mechanic does it so much better that I would rather do it in Photo Mechanic than do it in Lightroom. So the first thing I use Photo Mechanic for is to ingest the photo. So I've already inserted the card from my camera. And the first thing I'm going to do is tell Photo Mechanic where I want it to ingest the files. So I'm going to use this G-Speed drive. And in my archive system here, you can see it's the year 2021. I look for the folder called 2021-01, and I'm going to make a new folder. So I'm going to call this 2021-01, and the date of the shoot, which I think was the 7th, I'm not even sure. The model's name was Faith, and then I used the code MTM. That's just a personal code for me. Then it stands for Model Test Monday. It was a term I used to use when I would do testing every Monday. I no longer do testing every Monday, but I still use MTM as code for me to know that that's just a model shoot, that it's really like Instagram content and it's nothing terribly important. So I make a folder called with the name of the model and I call it raw. And that's where the raw images are going to go. And then I also make a folder called JPEGs like this. And again, that's internal code for me because in reality, with the folder that says JPEGs is going to contain my retouched final images. So anytime I see a folder that says Faith JPEGs, I know those shots are all retouched. They're ready to send out somewhere. But again, that's just my own internal code. So I'm going to select the Faith RAW folder here, and I'm going to ingest the images from this Leica M card, and you can see that that is selected. A lot of times I click the option here to erase the card after it ingests the pictures. Now that's kind of dangerous because if you erase the card and something goes wrong and you lose the images that you put onto the drive, you don't have a backup. However, there have been plenty of times when I'm shooting multiple cards on a job and the only way to keep, well, not the only way, but the way that I choose to keep the workflow clean is to erase the cards as I download them. So it's a little risky. It's up to you whether you would want to do that. But in any case, I'm going to ingest the images. I made a quick cut there because I had some family photos on the card that I didn't want to show. The second thing I do with the program is I pick the good from the bad. Now, the best thing about Photo Mechanic is basically as fast as you can push this button, that's how fast the images are going to change. Lightroom can take 1 second, and that might not sound like a lot of time, but if you shoot 1,000 images or something, and it takes a second to go through each image, it feels like it takes forever, and it does in fact take forever. So let's start going through these images. So you can use different numbers to tag images. Now, these are just some behind the scenes type pictures that are starting off of the model getting her makeup done. So generally what I'll do is I'll touch the number 4, which will turn the image, which will put a little yellow indicator down at the bottom. And that means I'm going to keep the image and not toss it out. So as I go through these, I'm just sort of right now just picking images that look okay to me in terms of them being in focus and something that maybe one day I would want to use. So anything that's not getting tagged by me right now will eventually end up getting erased. So I'm just making my tags here on what I like. And you can see the color is shifting here. That's because I'm using one of these ring lights that the makeup artists like to use. And those ring lights don't have a perfect color balance, but in RAW, it's very easy to fix and adjust that later. So I did a few shots of the makeup artist here as well. So I'll find one of those that I like. Again, you can see the color balance changing a little bit, but it's a RAW file, so it'll be easy to fix it. Okay, so here's where we get to the actual real shoot. I have my shutter speed is wrong here. That's why there's a black line here. You can also see some dirt on my sensor, and I didn't have anything to clean it, so I have to deal with that in Photoshop. So I started off just checking the light on her, which it's pretty good here. And in all of these images, which it's kind of hard to tell, I'm actually changing the power on the hair light, trying to get the hair light to the right place. So now I'm looking at the images kind of holistically where I can see the entire shoot. And I started off this shoot by asking the model to pose herself, which is something that I do quite often. I kind of do it for 2 reasons. For one thing, I like to just see what she's going to do and where she is in terms of posing. And I want to make sure I capture her and not just my vision of her. So again, I'm tagging yellow for everything I like. I also do it because I want her to pose herself until she runs out of poses. And then when she runs out of poses, I feel she's going to be very receptive to me posing her. So going through again, everything I touch yellow is what I would want to keep. I can see that there's a dust spot right on her face that I'm going to have to clone out. This was photographed on the Leica M10 just last week, but a lot of times when I use the Leica, I'm shooting it wide open, which is where you don't see the dust spots that much. But right now in the studio, I'm shooting it at 5.6 or at f8, and the dust spots are much more noticeable. So that's why I wasn't aware that they were there. So you can see there's a lot of very similar images, but it's very quick to go through them. I was really trying to get her to work her eyes, and I was just talking to her about being very subtle in her posing. So we worked this for a little while. I wasn't so sure about her hands, especially since her nails weren't done. So I'd probably end up keeping something where we don't see her hands. And see, like here, we're close, but I don't like what her pinkies are doing there. And here, we're pretty good, although the pinky is still not in a good spot. Her face is great here, though, but I really didn't get her hands right, which is too bad. This is better because you can't tell that her nails aren't done. So this is probably going to be one of the real shots. So I'm going to put a 5 on that because that's something that I'll probably actually use. And you'll see it turned green instead of turning yellow because I touched a different number. So that was really the end of the shoot. This was just a social media shoot, just something I do for Instagram. So once I had that, and I'm really just trying to get like 2 good shots, I did something a little bit different, which is I used the Nikon 58mm 1.2 lens, I think it is, 1.2. It's a lens that gives you really nice out of focus elements. It's not a tack sharp lens, but the out of focus parts look really cool, and it gives you a kind of 3D look. So I started just trying to get some shots of her lips, where her lips would be sharp and the rest of her face would be out of focus, and it would just look a little bit dreamy, something like this, just something different from, I'm going to tag that as a 5, just something different from the other shots I had done. Now this one has a little bit of camera shake, but I actually like it, so I'm going to keep that. I don't usually post things that are not tack sharp, but I do like that. These are just a few more that I'm tagging. I like this where we just see her neck, and I was focusing on her hair sometimes. You can see her face is a little bit fuzzy, which is nice. That's what this lens does. It's not a perfectly tack sharp lens. It's more of an artistic lens than a clinical lens, and that's why I like it, because it gives me something different. Not sure what's going on here. These are probably just some light checks or something. And again, one of the most important things to know about this program is how quickly I can cycle through the images, okay? And it writes the files very, very quickly. And if I ran this off the desktop instead of the external drive, it'll run even faster. Really as fast as you can push the button, it'll change images. So I'll save a couple of these, even though I don't really like them. I don't think these really work, but I'm just going to save 1 or 2 to represent them. This I do like. I'm going to keep that. I might even tag that as a 5. I kind of like it, even though shadows are all over the place. But these are done with the ambient lighting in the studio. These aren't done with my lights. It was just an attempt to get something a little bit different. I actually like this too. It's a little bit harder and dramatic than the other stuff I did. And again, going back to just focusing selectively on either her lips or her eyes. I'm going to keep that too. Once we have images selected, now in Photo Mechanic, it's very easy to only see the images I selected. So if I click this little box on the far right, I only see the images that I selected, the yellows and the greens. If I want, I can turn off the yellows and I can see just the greens, and these are the images that I think I like. And I noticed that I don't have an image of her from the main studio setup. So these images here, so I would just find one of these that I could add to the green, maybe here, as like a final select, one of these probably. So now my final selects that I would end up posting from would be from these images. I can easily make them bigger like this. One of the nice things about Photo Mechanic is Photo Mechanic doesn't care where the images are. It doesn't work like a catalog program like Lightroom. And by that I mean if I were to go into this drive here, right, and I go find the folder that I just made, right? So let's imagine if I change, let's say I change the name of this, right, to Test Shoot instead of MTM, right? Obviously, Photo Mechanic is not going to be able to find the folder because that folder no longer exists. But for Photo Mechanic to find it, all I need to do is this. On the left, I'm going to go back to the parent folder, which is 2021-01, hit refresh, and now it can find the folder, and I can go back to the raw file, and here's everything that I selected. And again, I can turn off what I didn't select, I can turn off my yellows, and I can just look at the greens, okay? If I did that same thing in Lightroom, for me at least, it would be a nightmare because Lightroom would start giving me errors. Oh, we can't find the file, and then I'd have to reconnect it through Lightroom, and it just doesn't give me the freedom to work the way I want to work because it's trying to catalog everything. This program is not trying to do this. Photo Mechanic is also great for naming images, so that's another way that I use it. So I'm going to turn on everything that I tag that I'm going to keep. I just do Command A to select everything, and then I'm going to just name these images. I use a naming convention that you can see here where it puts the year as 4 digits, and then it puts the month, and then it puts the day with a 0 before it, and then it does the sequence. I'm going to reset the sequence to 0, and then when I hit rename, it instantly renames the file. So this file is named Faith 2021, representing the year, 01, which is January, and the 7th, which is the date that I took the image, okay? So can instantly name the images. And one more thing that I use Photo Mechanic for is to move images around. So it's very easy, again, to just select the green. Let's turn off this. To just select the green, and then if I want to move them to the desktop, I can just drag the originals to the desktop or move them to another folder. I can also create a folder here and rename it, or I can name this folder back to what it was before. And of course, now Photo Mechanic will be aware of my renaming. Easy to see the images big. It's easy to, go through them. You can also use Photo Mechanic to caption images here. If you wanted to write a caption about who this is for a magazine, or put copyright information or your own contact information, all of those things can go in here. And Photo Mechanic even lets you do things like put abbreviations into the program. So let's say you were photographing the New York Jets, and you knew number 23 was the quarterback, and his name was Bob Smith. I don't follow sports. His name was Bob Smith. You could tell the program that anytime you write JT23 for Jets 23, just put his name in, because you've already stored that information. So that's a pretty useful thing. And then I will use Photo Mechanic to import into Lightroom. And the way I would normally do that is I just drag them in. Although in this case, I would actually reduce these greens to a little bit fewer images. So I'm going to make this first image yellow. I'm going to keep this between these two. I'm not sure what I like better. I think I'm going to keep this as a black and white. So these I could go back and turn them yellow since I'm not going to actually work on them now. And these would be the 3 images that I'll post from this shoot onto social media. And again, this is the program that I used to drag into Lightroom. But of course, I can't use Lightroom right now because I have to sign in, which is so annoying, all right? I'll go through the Lightroom and retouching workflow on another video maybe. Photo Mechanic is also the best program just to view your images, okay? So there's thousands of images on this G-Speed shuttle drive here, and it's very, very quick to just, let me just collapse some things here. So this drive covers the years 2013 to 2021. So it's very easy for me to just go to 2018, go to 2018-04, and this says here Stephanie MTM, so that's another test shoot. There's no JPEGs in there, so I guess I didn't really retouch anything from there. Marable and Hallie test shoot. This says Marable JPEG, so there's a final retouched image of her from that shoot of Maribel, and then I forgot this person's name. Hopefully I named her, which I did not, so I don't know her name. So to just go through images very quickly, this program is fantastic. And if I wanted to just assemble images, maybe I'm looking for images of blonde women for some strange reason, it's very easy to just take this image now and drag it to the desktop like that. To just go to another folder, something like here, this is a Hala, again, another test shoot, says Hala JPEGs. Very easy to just select an image from here and drag it onto the desktop, and then later I can go to the desktop and then I can just organize these images. These are the ones I put there earlier. Don't need them, very easy to just delete them. And then I could take these images now and organize them very easily and put them into a new folder, go to the desktop and make a new folder here that said, images for client, whatever I wanted to call it. move these two into there. So to deal with thousands and thousands of images, this is just the easiest way to do it. Again, sometimes when you're using programs like Lightroom, they're much slower and they keep telling, like when you move images from one place to another outside of Lightroom, Lightroom doesn't know where they are and you start getting error messages and it wants you to find these lost images before you continue and stuff. Photo Mechanic doesn't work that way. And that's a little hard to explain exactly what I mean by it, but hopefully you can figure it out. If not, I don't know, get the program, do a trial download or something, you'll see what I mean, okay? But anyway, Photo Mechanic, it is one of the absolute most necessary programs in my photographic workflow.